The champagne flute shattered against marble before Zara even heard the gunshot. She dropped to a crouch behind the bar cart, her pulse hammering so violently she could feel it in her teeth, her fingertips, the hollow of her throat where her cheap necklace suddenly felt like a noose. 3 seconds ago, she'd been refilling water glasses at table 12. Now she was pressed against rosewood paneling, listening to screams ricochet off the vaulted ceiling of the obsidian room like trapped birds. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not here. Not in the kind of place where a single reservation required 3 background checks and a deposit that exceeded her monthly rent. Zara Hayes had worked at the Monarch for 18 months, long enough to recognize the difference between old money that whispered and new money that shouted, long enough to know which tables tipped in hundreds and which ones palmed her phone number with 50s attached, long enough to understand that some guests didn't arrive through the front door and some conversations died the moment she approached with fresh bread. But she'd never seen anyone pull a gun inside the dining room until tonight. "Everybody down!" The voice came from somewhere near the kitchen entrance, male, controlled, carrying the kind of authority that made 40 people drop to polished floors without question. "Hands where I can see them. This'll be over in 90 seconds if nobody's stupid." Zara's mind caught on that number. 90 seconds. Precise. Rehearsed. This wasn't rage or desperation. This was a plan. She risked a glance around the edge of the cart. The shooter stood center floor, tactical gear beneath an open suit jacket, face covered by a black balaclava. But it was his posture that made her stomach drop, relaxed, almost bored like he'd done this a dozen times before. His weapon wasn't pointed at the terrified couple clutching each other near the window, or the businessman face down beside the sommelier station. It was trained on table 9, on him, Dominic Cade. Zara had served him exactly 7 times in the past 4 months, always Tuesdays, always 9 p.m. sharp, always the same order, ribeye, medium rare, no sides, a single glass of Barolo that he never finished. He was the kind of handsome that didn't need to try, sharp jawline, dark eyes that absorbed everything and revealed nothing, the kind of tailored suit that cost more than her car. More importantly, he was the kind of man who made the manager personally check his reservation, who had 2 phones on the table at all times, who never, ever sat with his back to the door. Except tonight, he wasn't alone. The man seated across from him, broad-shouldered, thick-necked, with the flat stare of someone who'd seen violence up close, looked exactly like what he was supposed to be, a bodyguard, loyal, watchful, unmovable. But right now, he was smiling. Zara's breath caught. She'd spent 18 months reading micro-expressions, the twitch of a jaw that meant the steak was overcooked, the slight lean-back that signaled readiness to leave. She'd learned to see what people were trying not to show, and what she saw now was betrayal. The bodyguard, the man who'd sat 3 feet from Dominic Cade for the past 2 hours, slowly slid his chair back, not startled, not defensive. He stood with the ease of someone who'd been waiting for this moment, hands loose at his sides, making no move toward the weapon everyone knew he carried. Dominic didn't move. His expression didn't change. But Zara saw his fingers tighten, almost imperceptibly around the stem of his wine glass. He knew. "Evening, Mr. Cade." The shooter's voice was smooth, almost conversational. "Your friend here says you've been expecting us." The bodyguard's smile widened. "Told you he'd figure it out eventually. Man's got instincts." "Not good enough instincts." The shooter took 2 steps forward. "Where's the ledger?" Dominic finally moved, leaning back in his chair with the kind of lazy grace that shouldn't exist in a hostage situation. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than Zara expected, almost bored. "Marcus has been with me for 6 years. I doubled his salary 3 times, paid for his daughter's surgery, set up a trust fund for his grandkids." His eyes flicked to the bodyguard. "And you sold me out for what? A percentage? A promotion?" Marcus shrugged. "Nothing personal, Dom, just better math." "Better math." Dominic repeated the words like he was tasting something rotten. "You know what happens now, right?" "Yeah." Marcus's hand finally moved, resting on the grip of his own weapon. "You die clean, or you die messy. Your call." 90 seconds, the shooter had said. Zara counted 43 since the glass shattered. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to clench them into fists. Every instinct screamed at her to stay down, stay silent, wait for this to pass like a summer storm. She was a waitress, a nobody, a woman whose biggest decision tonight was supposed to be whether she could afford new tires or had to stretch them another month. This wasn't her world, wasn't her problem, wasn't her life. But then Dominic's eyes moved, not to the shooter, not to Marcus, to her. For half a second, their gazes locked, and Zara saw something she didn't expect. Not fear, not desperation, recognition. He knew she was there, knew she was watching, and in that brief, impossible moment, she understood something that made absolutely no sense. He'd been expecting this. The betrayal, the setup, the 90-second execution window. But he'd been counting on chaos, and chaos meant witnesses. Zara's pulse roared in her ears. Her thoughts splintered into 1,000 panicked fragments, but one rose above the rest, sharp and clear and utterly insane. If I do nothing, he dies. She didn't know why that mattered, didn't know why her hands were already moving, reaching for the wine bottle on the cart beside her, heavy and dark and full, didn't know why she was about to do the stupidest thing of her entire life. 62 seconds. The shooter adjusted his stance, finger tightening on the trigger. Last chance, Cade. The ledger, or I start removing pieces of you until... The wine bottle hit him in the temple with a wet, sickening crack. He went down like a dropped puppet, weapon clattering across marble. For one frozen, crystalline moment, nobody moved. Then Marcus roared, weapon clearing leather. And Dominic moved. His hand shot across the table, grabbing Marcus's wrist and twisting with brutal efficiency. The gun discharged, deafening, the bullet punching through the decorative ceiling. Plaster rained down. Someone screamed. Dominic drove his elbow into Marcus's throat, then slammed his face into the table hard enough to crack the wood. Once. Twice. The bodyguard went limp, blood pooling beneath his shattered nose. The entire sequence took 4 seconds. Dominic straightened, breathing steady, and turned to look at Zara. She was still crouched behind the cart, wine bottle dangling from nerveless fingers, her entire body vibrating with adrenaline and shock and the dawning realization of what she'd just done. "You..." her voice cracked. "You're welcome?" Dominic tilted his head slightly like she was a puzzle he hadn't expected to encounter. Then, impossibly, one corner of his mouth lifted. "Thank you," he said quietly. That was either very brave or spectacularly stupid. Both, Zara managed. Definitely both. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The other diners were starting to move, scrambling toward exits, pulling out phones. The manager appeared in the doorway, face white as bone. Dominic stepped over Marcus's unconscious body and offered Zara his hand. She stared at it. This perfectly manicured hand extended to her, like they were meeting at a networking event instead of standing over 2 bleeding men in a restaurant that smelled like gunpowder and terror. "I need to leave," he said simply. "Right now, and you need to come with me." What? You just assaulted an armed intruder in front of 40 witnesses. Half of them are recording. Your face will be on every screen in the city by midnight. His eyes were steady, utterly calm. The people who sent him? They'll want to know who you are, why you interfered, whether you know something. Zara's stomach dropped. "I'm just a waitress. I don't know anything. They won't believe that." He kept his hand extended. "So you have 2 choices. Wait for the police, give a statement, go home, and hope the men who planned this are feeling merciful." His gaze sharpened. "Or trust me for the next 10 minutes and stay alive." "That's not... You can't just..." The words tangled in her throat. Dominic's expression didn't change. 90 seconds, remember? They had this time down to the second, which means there's a cleanup crew less than 3 minutes out. When they arrive and see this, he gestured to the carnage, they'll improvise. And improvisation means collateral damage. Zara looked at his hand, at the door, at the unconscious shooter bleeding onto imported Italian tile, at the life she'd had 18 seconds ago, before she decided to be brave or stupid or both. "If I go with you," she whispered, "what happens?" "I keep you breathing," Dominic said. "That's all I can promise right now." The sirens were close now, close enough that she could hear individual wails separating from the chorus. Zara thought about her studio apartment, her student loans, the car that needed new tires, the ordinary, exhausting, safe life she'd built out of nothing. Then she thought about the way Marcus had smiled when he betrayed the man who'd paid for his daughter's surgery. Thought about 90 seconds. Thought about cleanup crews and collateral damage and men who planned murders with the precision of dinner reservations. She took his hand. Dominic pulled her to her feet, his grip firm and warm and somehow reassuring despite everything. "Kitchen exit," he said. "Stay close. Don't look back." They moved. Behind them, chaos erupted, shouts and sirens and the manager screaming into his phone. But Zara didn't look back. She kept her eyes forward, her hand locked in Dominic's, and ran toward a future she couldn't begin to imagine. The last thing she heard before they burst through the kitchen door was Marcus, conscious now, spitting blood and fury. "You're dead, Cade, you and the fucking waitress!" The door slammed shut, and Zara Hayes, 27-year-old server with $9,000 in savings and a sociology degree she'd never used, realized with perfect, terrifying clarity. Her old life had just ended, and whatever came next, there was no going back. If this story grabbed you by the throat in the first 60 seconds, do me a favor. Like this video if you would have thrown that wine bottle too. Subscribe as we continue the story and comment below. Would you have run with Dominic or stayed to face the police? I read every single answer, and here's the real question. Have you ever had a split-second decision change your entire life? A moment where you chose courage over safety and everything shifted? Share your story below because your experience might be the next one I turn into a script. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The black SUV smelled like leather and gunpowder. Zara pressed herself against the passenger door, her reflection ghostly in the tinted window as the city blurred past. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She'd clenched them together in her lap 3 times already, but the tremor kept creeping back, spreading up her arms like a slow-motion earthquake. Dominic drove with the kind of calm that felt obscene given what had just happened. One hand on the wheel, the other resting casually on the center console. No white knuckles, no frantic glances in the rearview mirror. He navigated the downtown traffic like a man heading home from a particularly boring corporate dinner. "You're going to want to breathe," he said without looking at her. Zara realized she'd been holding her breath for the past 20 seconds. She exhaled shakily. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they won't look first." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting right now." His tone wasn't cruel, just matter of fact, like he was explaining a policy she should have already understood. Zara's fingers found the door handle. "Stop the car." "No. I said stop the car." Her voice cracked on the last word, fury and terror tangling into something sharp. "You don't get to just, I didn't agree to be kidnapped." Dominic's jaw tightened, the first real emotion she'd seen since they left the restaurant. "You took my hand. You ran. You made a choice." "I made a choice to not get shot in the next 3 minutes. That's different from this." She gestured wildly at the interior of the SUV, at him, at the city disappearing behind them. "You're right," Dominic said quietly. "It is different. But the moment you threw that bottle, the moment those cameras caught your face, you stopped being a bystander. You became a liability." The word hit her like a slap. A liability? To them. He finally glanced at her, and something in his expression softened. "Not to me." Zara wanted to scream, wanted to cry, wanted to grab the wheel and crash them into a lamppost just so something would make sense again. Instead, she pressed her forehead against the cold window and closed her eyes. "Who are you?" she whispered. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of the engine and the distant wail of sirens that might have been coincidence or might have been hunting them. "Dominic Cade," he said finally. "I run a private equity firm that specializes in distressed asset acquisition. On paper, I'm very boring." "And off paper?" His mouth curved, but it wasn't quite a smile. "Off paper, I know where a lot of bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking." Jesus Christ. Zara laughed, a high brittle sound that didn't belong to her. "I threw a wine bottle at a hitman to save a hedge fund manager. Private equity. different tax implications. The corner of his mouth twitched. But yes, this is insane. I need to call my roommate. She'll be worried. No phones. Dominic's voice sharpened. Yours is still at the restaurant, which is the only reason you're not already dead. Zara's stomach dropped. My phone is pinging your location to anyone who wants to find you, which is why I had one of my people pocket it before we left. He took a left turn, merging onto a highway she didn't recognize. By now, it's halfway across the city in the pocket of a very confused Uber driver. Despite everything, Zara felt a flicker of something that might have been admiration. You planned that. In the 30 seconds between attempted murder and grand theft, Waitress, you planned a decoy. I've had a lot of practice thinking on my feet. I'm starting to get that. They drove in silence for another 10 minutes. The city gave way to industrial warehouses, then to nothing, just dark roads and darker sky. Zara's panic had settled into a low, constant hum, like tinnitus after a concert. She was too exhausted to maintain full-scale terror. The bodyguard, she said eventually. Marcus, how long did you know? Dominic's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel, first real crack in his composure. 3 weeks. 3 weeks? Zara twisted in her seat to stare at him. You knew for 3 weeks that the man guarding your life was planning to kill you, and you just... What? Kept showing up for dinner reservations? I needed to know who else was involved, how deep the rot went. His voice was flat, clinical. Marcus wasn't smart enough to plan this alone. Someone bought him. I needed them to think they'd succeeded in staying hidden. So you used yourself as bait. Yes. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. This time, Dominic actually smiled. Small, but genuine. You should talk. You attacked an armed man with a wine bottle. That was instinct. You made a plan to almost die. And your instinct saved my life. He glanced at her, and for the first time since this nightmare started, Zara saw something in his eyes that looked like respect. Which means you're either incredibly brave or you have a death wish you haven't told me about. Neither. She stopped, trying to find words for the thing that had moved through her in that moment. I saw his face, Marcus's face, the way he smiled when he betrayed you, and I thought if I did nothing, if I just stayed quiet like I always do, I'd never forgive myself. Dominic was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. What do you mean, like you always do? Zara laughed bitterly. I've spent my entire adult life being invisible, the good server, the quiet roommate, the girl who doesn't make waves because making waves means losing shifts, losing tips, losing the fragile little life I've built. She pressed her palms against her eyes, and tonight I threw all of that away for a man I don't even know. Maybe you were tired of being invisible. The words hung in the air between them, sharp and true. Maybe, Zara admitted. The SUV slowed, turning onto a gravel road that led to a sprawling warehouse complex. Security lights flickered on as they approached, illuminating chain-link fencing and industrial loading docks. It looked like the kind of place where bodies actually got buried, not metaphorically. Zara's pulse spiked. Dominic, it's safe. He parked near a side entrance, killed the engine. This is one of my properties. Legitimate, completely above board. We store vintage cars for collectors. He met her eyes. No one knows about it except 3 people, and one of them is dead. Marcus. They sat in the darkness, engine ticking as it cooled. Zara could hear her own heartbeat, loud and insistent. What happens now? She asked. Dominic unbuckled his seatbelt but didn't move to open the door. Now I make some calls. Figure out who bought Marcus and how much they know. Tomorrow I'll arrange new identification for you, a place to stay, enough money to disappear if that's what you want. And if I don't want to disappear? He studied her face in the dim light. Then we have a different conversation. What kind of conversation? The kind where I tell you the truth about who I am and what I do. The kind where you decide if you want to walk away from your old life forever, or if you want to learn how to survive in this one. His voice was steady, but Zara heard the weight beneath it. Because here's what you need to understand. The men who sent Marcus don't forgive witnesses. They don't show mercy to civilians who got in the way. Your face is on 40 cell phones right now. By morning, it'll be in front of very dangerous people who will want you dead just to tie up loose ends." Zara's mouth went dry. "So I'm dead either way." "No." Dominic's hand moved, hovering for a moment before settling on her shoulder. The touch was brief, but it grounded her. "If you disappear, I can make sure they never find you. New name, new city, new life. You'll be safe." "But I'll spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder." "Yes." "And the other option?" Dominic's eyes were very dark, very serious. "You stay. You learn. I teach you how to see threats before they materialize, how to move through this world without leaving traces, how to survive when people like Marcus decide you're a problem that needs solving." He paused. "But that means you become part of this world, permanently. No going back to restaurant shifts and student loan payments. You'll be someone different. Someone dangerous. Someone aware." Zara thought about her studio apartment, the succulents dying on her windowsill, her roommate Maya, who borrowed her clothes without asking and made terrible coffee and left passive-aggressive notes about dish soap, the manager at the Monarch who'd promised her a raise 3 times and delivered it 0 times. The life she'd been living wasn't much, but it was hers. And now it was gone. "I need to think," she said quietly. "You have 12 hours. Dominic opened his door, cold air rushing, in. "After that, decisions get made whether you're ready or not." They crossed the gravel lot to the warehouse entrance. Dominic pressed his thumb to a biometric scanner, and the heavy door swung open with a pneumatic hiss. Inside was exactly what he'd promised. Vintage cars gleaming under soft lighting, chrome and paint jobs worth more than Zara would earn in a decade. The space smelled like motor oil and money, but it was the office in the back corner that made her stop. Through the glass walls, she could see multiple monitors displaying security feeds, maps, and what looked like financial spreadsheets. A woman sat at the main desk, early 30s, dark hair pulled into a severe bun, wearing tactical pants and a shoulder holster like it was business casual. She looked up when they entered, her expression flickering from professional neutrality to something sharper when she saw Zara. "This is the waitress?" Her voice was smooth, Eastern European accent softening the edges. "Zara Hayes," Dominic said. "Zara, this is Katya. She handles security." "And cleanup," Katya added, standing. She was tall, athletic, and moved like every step was tactical. "I've been monitoring police scanners. The restaurant is swarming with local PD and FBI. They're calling it a robbery gone wrong." "Do they have IDs on the shooter?" Dominic asked. "Not yet, but they have very clear footage of Ms. Hayes assaulting him with a $300 bottle of wine." Katya's mouth curved slightly. 42 different camera angles. It's already on 3 news sites. "Heroic waitress saves diner from armed robbery." Zara felt the blood drain from her face. "I'm on the news?" "Local news, for now." Katya's expression softened marginally. "But it's only a matter of time before someone connects you to Dominic. And when that happens, the people who sent Marcus will know exactly who interfered." Dominic finished. Zara sank into the nearest chair, her legs suddenly unreliable. "How long do I have?" Katya and Dominic exchanged a look. 48 hours, Katya said. "Maybe 72 if we're lucky." "And then?" "Then they come for you," Dominic said quietly, "unless you're already gone. Or unless—" He didn't finish the sentence, but Zara heard it anyway. "Unless you're ready to fight back." She looked at the monitors displaying her own face on repeat, a frozen moment caught from 17 different angles. The wine bottle mid-swing, her expression determined and terrified in equal measure. She looked like someone else, someone brave, someone who made choices instead of accepting whatever life handed her. 12 hours, she said, meeting Dominic's eyes. "You said I have 12 hours to decide." "Yes." Zara stood, her legs steadier now. "I don't need 12 hours. Dominic went very still. "Zara, I'm not running." Her voice was quiet, but there was steel beneath it. Steel she hadn't known she possessed until this moment. "I'm tired of being invisible. Tired of playing it safe. Tired of letting other people decide who I am and what I'm worth." She took a breath. "So teach me. Teach me how to survive in your world, because I'm not disappearing, and I'm sure as hell not dying." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Katya laughed, a short, surprised sound. "I like her." Dominic's expression was unreadable. "You understand what you're agreeing to? Once you start down this path, there's no going back. You said that already." Zara crossed her arms. "But here's the thing. There's no going back anyway. My face is on the news. Dangerous people know I exist. Running just means I spend the rest of my life waiting for them to find me." She met his gaze steadily. "So I'd rather learn how to make sure they regret it when they do." Dominic studied her for what felt like an eternity. Then slowly he nodded. "All right." He turned to Katya. "Get her set up in the East Wing. Tomorrow we start training." "Tomorrow?" Zara's voice cracked slightly. "Don't I get a night to process this?" "You get 6 hours of sleep," Katya said, already moving toward a door marked Private. "Training starts at 600. Wear something you don't mind bleeding in." "Bleeding? Wait, what?" But Katya was already gone. Zara turned to Dominic, searching for reassurance, guidance, anything. He offered her something that might have been a smile. "Welcome to your new life, Zara Hayes. Try not to die in the first week." Then he walked away, leaving her alone in a warehouse full of expensive cars and security monitors that showed her face on infinite loop. A hero, a target, a woman who'd thrown a bottle and destroyed everything. Zara looked at her hands. They'd finally stopped shaking. She wondered if that was a good sign, or if she'd just stopped feeling afraid of the wrong things. Zara didn't sleep. She lay on the narrow cot in what Katya had called the East Wing, a converted office space with concrete walls, a single window overlooking the warehouse floor, and a door that locked from the outside. The blanket smelled like industrial detergent. The pillow was flat as cardboard. But it wasn't the accommodations keeping her awake. It was the fact that 6 hours ago, she'd been worried about whether Table 7 would leave a decent tip. And now she was lying in a secret warehouse, waiting for dawn so a woman with a shoulder holster could teach her how not to die. Her mind kept circling back to the same moment. Marcus's smile, the way betrayal looked so much like satisfaction, the casual cruelty of selling out someone who'd trusted you, who'd paid for your daughter's surgery, who'd given you 6 years of loyalty in return for nothing. Just better math, he'd said. Zara wondered what the math looked like from where Marcus was now. Probably a hospital bed with a police guard, possibly a morgue. Dominic hadn't said, and she hadn't asked. She was learning there were questions you didn't ask in this world. At 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before her alarm, the door opened. Katya stood silhouetted against the hallway light, already dressed in tactical gear, her hair pulled back so severely it looked painful. She held 2 cups of coffee, steam curling into the cold air. "You're awake," she observed, not surprised. "Couldn't sleep." "Good. Sleep is a luxury you can't afford yet." Katya handed her one of the cups. Black, no sugar. "Get dressed. Training starts in 10 minutes. "You said 0600. I lied. Welcome to Lesson 1. Don't trust schedules." Katya's mouth curved slightly. People who rely on predictability die predictably. Zara took a sip of coffee. It was strong enough to strip paint. "Is everything going to be a lesson?" "Everything is a lesson. Whether you learn from it determines whether you survive." Katya turned to leave, paused. "Wear layers. You'll sweat through the first 2. The training floor was in the warehouse's basement, a space that looked like it had been designed by someone who understood exactly how to break a human body and wanted to practice efficiently. Padded mats covered half the floor. The other half was concrete. Punching bags hung from reinforced chains. A rack of weapons, knives, batons, training guns, lined one wall. The opposite wall was entirely mirrors, reflecting everything back at twice the intensity. Dominic stood near the center, wearing dark athletic gear that made him look less like a private equity manager and more like exactly what he was, dangerous. "Zara," he acknowledged her with a nod. "How do you feel?" "Terrified," she said honestly. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." He gestured to the mats. "Come here." She approached slowly, acutely aware that both he and Katya were watching her walk, cataloging something she couldn't name. "First things first," Dominic said. "Show me how you'd defend yourself if someone grabbed you from behind." Zara blinked. What? Someone grabs you right now. What do? I've never. Katya moved before Zara could finish the sentence, fast and silent, arms wrapping around her from behind, pinning her arms to her sides. Panic flared. Zara struggled instinctively, twisting, trying to break free. Katya's grip was iron, immovable. "Stop!" Dominic's voice cut through her panic. "Katya, release!" The pressure vanished. Zara stumbled forward, breathing hard, adrenaline singing through her veins. "What did you just learn?" Dominic asked. "That she's stronger than me?" Zara's voice came out sharper than intended. "That panic makes you predictable." He crossed his arms. "You twisted right. Everyone twists right when grabbed from behind. It's instinct, which means your attacker expects it and compensates." He moved closer. "The first rule of survival isn't strength. It's doing what they don't expect. So I should twist left? You should stop thinking in terms of left and right and start thinking in terms of leverage, weak points, and speed." Katya circled behind her again. "Every body has vulnerabilities. Doesn't matter how strong they are. Instep, knee, groin, solar plexus, throat, eyes. You're not trying to win a fight. You're trying to create enough pain to escape." "Again," Dominic said. Katya grabbed her. This time, instead of twisting, Zara drove her heel down onto Katya's instep. Not hard enough to injure, this was training, but enough to signal intent. Katya released immediately, stepping back with an approving nod. "Better," Dominic said, "but you hesitated. Hesitation gets you killed." They drilled for 2 hours. Grabs from behind, grabs from the front, someone pinning her against a wall, someone reaching for her throat. Each scenario played out a dozen times until Zara's muscles screamed and sweat soaked through her shirt and sports bra, dripping onto the mats. Katya was relentless. Every mistake was corrected immediately, physically. Wrong angle? Katya adjusted her arm with enough force that Zara felt it in her bones. Weak strike? Katya made her repeat it until her knuckles were raw. But she was also patient in a way Zara hadn't expected. When Zara's frustration peaked, when she wanted to scream that this was impossible, that she wasn't built for this, Katya would demonstrate the move one more time, slower, breaking it into components Zara could actually process. "You're thinking too much," Katya said during a water break. "Your body knows what to do. Your brain is getting in the way." "My brain is trying to keep me from getting hurt. Your brain is trying to keep you comfortable. Different thing." Katya took a long drink from her bottle. "Comfort is the enemy of competence. You need to get comfortable being uncomfortable." By hour 3, something shifted. Zara stopped thinking about the moves and started feeling them. The angle of her elbow when she struck. The transfer of weight when she twisted free. The exact amount of force needed to make someone reconsider grabbing her. Her body was learning a language her mind hadn't caught up to yet. "Good," Dominic said, watching from the sidelines. "Now the hard part." Zara wanted to laugh. "That wasn't the hard part. That was mechanics. Now we add psychology." He stepped onto the mat. "Attack me." Zara froze. "What?" "You heard me. Attack me like you mean it." She looked at Katya, who just raised an eyebrow. No help coming from that corner. Zara turned back to Dominic, who stood relaxed, hands loose at his sides, utterly unconcerned. "I'm not going to hurt you," she said. "I know. That's the problem." His eyes were steady on hers. "You're still thinking like a victim, like someone who apologizes for taking up space. I need you to think like someone who refuses to be touched without permission." "I don't." "Do it," he said quietly, "or admit you're not ready for this world." Something hot flared in Zara's chest. Anger, maybe, or pride, or the memory of Marcus's smile and the knowledge that men like him only respected force. She moved. Not gracefully, not perfectly, but she moved with intention, driving forward, aiming for his solar plexus the way Katya had taught her. Dominic sidestepped, caught her wrist, and in one fluid motion had her turned, arm locked, face pressed against the mat. "Again," he said, releasing her. She attacked again. Same result, and again and again. Each time he countered effortlessly, showing her exactly where her technique failed, where her commitment wavered, where she pulled her punch at the last second because some part of her still believed nice girls didn't hit people. By the 15th attempt, Zara was crying, not sobbing. Tears just leaked from the corners of her eyes, mixing with sweat, born from frustration and exhaustion and the crushing weight of how much she didn't know. "I can't," she gasped, still pinned. "I can't do this." Dominic's voice was quiet against her ear. "Yes, you can. You're just afraid of what you'll become if you do." He released her. Zara lay on the mat, breathing hard, her body screaming. Every muscle was fire. Every thought was mud. "Get up," Katya said, not cruel, just factual. Zara didn't want to get up, wanted to stay on this mat forever, wanted to go back to her studio apartment and her dying succulents, and the life where the hardest decision was whether to smile through a customer's condescension or risk a bad tip. But that life was gone, and lying here wouldn't bring it back. She got up. Dominic was watching her with something that looked almost like respect. "One more time. But this time, I want you to remember something." "What?" "You threw a wine bottle at an armed man last night. You didn't think. You didn't hesitate. You saw what needed to happen, and you did it." His voice lowered. "That person is still inside you. I need you to find her again." Zara wiped her face with the back of her hand. Her arm trembled with fatigue. She thought about the moment in the restaurant, the split second between seeing Marcus's betrayal and deciding to act. There had been no time for doubt, no space for fear, just recognition of what needed to happen, and the will to make it happen. She looked at Dominic, seeing past the expensive haircut and the calculated calm to the man underneath, the one who'd used himself as bait, who'd known for 3 weeks he was going to be betrayed and walked into that restaurant anyway, who'd survived by being willing to do what others wouldn't. Zara attacked. This time she didn't pull her punch, didn't hesitate, didn't apologize with her body language. She committed fully, driving forward with everything she had, and when Dominic moved to counter, she adjusted mid-strike, shifted her weight, and landed a blow to his ribs that wasn't enough to hurt him, but was enough to make him acknowledge it. He caught her follow-up, but this time there was surprise in his eyes. "There," he said, releasing her, a genuine smile breaking across his face. "That's who you need to be." Zara stood there, chest heaving, hands shaking, something fierce and unfamiliar burning in her chest. Katya slow-clapped from the sidelines. "Not bad for a waitress." "Former waitress," Zara corrected, surprising herself. The words hung in the air, solid and real. She wasn't going back, wasn't disappearing, wasn't running. She was becoming someone new, someone who hit back, someone who survived. "Break time," Dominic said, tossing her a towel. 15 minutes. Then we moved to situational awareness. As he walked away, Katya approached, something almost like approval in her eyes. "You broke through your own ceiling today," she said quietly. "Most people never do. They carry their limitations like badges." She paused. "But you need to know something." "What?" "The training only gets harder from here, and harder doesn't just mean physically." Katya's expression was serious. "Dominic is going to push you to places you didn't know you could go, break parts of you that need breaking, and rebuild you into something that can survive what's coming." "What is coming?" Katya glanced toward the office where Dominic had disappeared. "He hasn't told you yet, has he? About what Marcus was actually selling." Zara's stomach tightened. "He said a ledger." "Not just any ledger." Katya's voice dropped. "A list of names. People who've bought their way into legitimate businesses using very illegitimate money. Judges, politicians, CEOs. People who would kill entire families to keep that information buried." The weight of it hit Zara like a physical blow. "And Dominic has it?" "Had it. Past tense." Katya met her eyes. "Marcus told them where it was hidden, which means the people hunting Dominic aren't just trying to kill him anymore. What are they trying to do? Erase him, his company, his assets, every person who ever worked for him." Katya's expression was grim. "Which, as of last night, includes you." Zara felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. "How many people are we talking about?" "On the list? 47. but each of them has resources, connections, people willing to do anything to protect them. Katya tilted her head. The man you saved last night? He didn't just run a private equity firm, he ran the only independent archive of financial crimes that could bring down half the power structure in this city. Jesus Christ, Zara breathed. Yeah. Katya's smile was thin. So when I say the training gets harder, I mean you have maybe 2 weeks before they find this location, and when they do, you need to be ready to fight like your life depends on it. Because it does. Because it does, Katya confirmed. The door to the office opened. Dominic emerged, his expression unreadable, carrying a slim black folder. He crossed the training floor and stopped in front of Zara, holding out the folder. "What is this?" she asked. "Your choice." He met her eyes. Inside are 3 things: a new identity with enough money to disappear anywhere in the world, a contract offering you a position in my organization with full protection and salary, and a phone number. What's the phone number for? Calling the FBI, turning yourself in as a witness, entering protective custody. His voice was steady. 3 paths. All of them keep you alive, but only one keeps you free. Zara took the folder, feeling the weight of it. Not just paper, but futures, possibilities, the last real choice she might get to make for herself. "You don't have to decide right now," Dominic said. "Yes, I do." Zara opened the folder, looking at the 3 neat sections. New identity, contract, phone number, 3 different versions of survival, 3 different versions of herself. She thought about the woman who'd walked into the Monarch 18 months ago, desperate for a job, willing to smile through anything if it meant making rent. Thought about the woman who'd thrown a wine bottle at a gunman because staying silent felt worse than dying. Thought about the woman who'd just landed a blow on a man who could probably kill her 6 different ways without breaking a sweat. She pulled out the contract, leaving the other 2 documents in the folder. "I choose this one," she said. Dominic didn't smile, but something in his eyes warmed. "You're sure?" "No." Zara met his gaze. "But I'm done running. From danger, from myself, from the person I've been afraid to become." She held up the contract. "So teach me. Not just how to survive, how to win." Katya laughed, a sound of genuine delight. "Oh, I really like her." Dominic took the folder back, pulled out a pen, and handed it to Zara. "Sign on the last page, and understand that once you do, you're mine, my responsibility, my asset, my problem if this goes wrong." "Yours," Zara agreed. She signed her name, Zara Hayes, one last time, and felt something inside her click into place. A door closing behind her, a new one, opening ahead. Dominic took the contract, folded it precisely, and tucked it into his jacket. "Welcome to Cade Security Consulting. Your first assignment starts tonight." "Tonight?" Zara's voice cracked. "I've been training for 4 hours." "And you'll train for 4 more this afternoon. But tonight, you're going to learn the most important skill I can teach you." Dominic's expression was serious. How to walk into a room full of people who want you dead and convince them you belong there. Zara's mouth went dry. "Where?" "A charity gala. Very exclusive. Very dangerous." He glanced at Katya. "Get her ready. I want her looking like she was born into money and trained to kill." "Both at once?" Katya raised an eyebrow. "That's my specialty." As Dominic walked away, Zara stood there holding the pen, her signature still wet on a contract that had just changed her life forever. Katya put a hand on her shoulder. "You made the right choice?" "How do you know?" "Because the other 2 would have kept you safe. This one makes you dangerous." Katya's smile was sharp. "And dangerous women survive when safe ones don't." Zara looked at her hands, still trembling, still exhausted, but no longer afraid. Or maybe just afraid of different things. "What happens at this gala?" she asked quietly. Katya's expression darkened. "You meet the man who bought Marcus, the man who ordered Dominic's execution." She paused. "And you smile at him like you don't know he's planning yours." The dress was a weapon. Zara stared at herself in the full-length mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back. The gown was midnight blue, almost black, cut to skim her body in ways that suggested rather than revealed. The fabric cost more than 3 months of her old rent. The heels added 4 inches and forced her spine into a posture that screamed confidence even when she felt none. But it was the necklace that made her breath catch. A single teardrop diamond that Katya had fastened around her throat with clinical precision, explaining in her matter-of-fact way that it was worth approximately $200,000 and contained a tracking device, a panic button, and enough historical provenance to make anyone who knew jewelry understand exactly what kind of woman wore it. The kind who belongs, Katya had said, the kind who doesn't apologize for taking up space. That had been 4 hours ago. 4 hours of transformation that felt more invasive than the morning's physical training. A stylist had cut Zara's hair, taking 6 inches and leaving it sharp, angled, expensive. Makeup that looked natural but had taken 40 minutes to apply. Manicure, pedicure. A crash course in walking in heels that could double as weapons. "You don't walk like a woman who used to carry trays," Katya had said, making her practice over and over until her stride shifted from apologetic to inevitable. Now, standing in the warehouse's converted dressing area, Zara felt like a stranger wearing her own skin. "Stop looking at yourself like you're wearing a costume." Dominic's voice came from behind her. She turned. He stood in the doorway dressed in a tuxedo that probably cost more than her car, looking like he'd been born for rooms where champagne cost $1,000 per bottle. "I feel like an imposter," she admitted. "Good. Everyone in that room is an imposter. The difference is, they've been doing it longer." He stepped closer, studying her with an intensity that made her want to squirm. "You look perfect, but looking perfect isn't enough." "What else do I need?" "To believe it." He circled her slowly, assessing. "Right now, you're performing. I need you inhabiting. There's a difference." "I don't know how to be this person." "Yes, you do. You've been watching people like this for 18 months, learning their tells, their patterns, the way they hold a glass, the way they signal to servers without speaking." His eyes met hers. "You've been studying the enemy. Now you become them." Zara swallowed hard. "Who am I supposed to be tonight?" Dominic pulled out a slim dossier, handed it to her. Zara Merchant, art consultant specializing in pre-war European acquisitions, educated at Princeton, family money from shipping interests, recently returned from a 3-year stint in Paris. She flipped through the pages. There were photos, documents, a complete backstory that someone had clearly spent hours constructing. "This is insane. What if someone asks me about Princeton, about Paris? I've never even left the country." Then you redirect. Make them talk about themselves. People love talking about themselves. Katya emerged from the shadows, dressed in her own evening gown, looking like a completely different person. Softer, elegant, still deadly. "You're not there to convince them you're real. You're there to make them believe you're important enough that questioning you would be rude. And if they question anyway?" Dominic's expression hardened. "Then you smile like you find their skepticism amusing and excuse yourself to refresh your drink. I'll handle the rest." "Handle how?" "You don't need to know. Plausible deniability is its own kind of protection." He checked his watch. "Car leaves in 15 minutes. Katya will brief you on the way." "Wait, what's my objective tonight? What am I actually supposed to do?" Dominic met her eyes, his expression unreadable. "Survive, observe, and most importantly, stand next to me when I'm introduced to Vincent Caruso without looking like you're about to throw up." The name hit Zara like cold water. Caruso, the man who bought Marcus, who ordered my execution, who currently believes I don't know his identity. Dominic's voice was ice. "Tonight, we're going to let him think he succeeded in staying hidden, and you're going to be the detail that makes him doubt himself." "I don't understand." "You will." He turned to leave, paused. "One more thing. If something goes wrong, and it might, your only job is to get out. Don't try to help me. Don't try to be a hero. Just get to the street and call the number Katya programmed into your phone." "What number?" "The one that makes you disappear." He didn't wait for her response, just walked away, leaving Zara standing in a dress that cost more than her education, about to walk into a room full of people who wanted her dead. Katya touched her elbow. Come on, we need to go over the faces. The limousine's interior smelled like leather and money. Zara sat across from Katya, who'd spread a dozen photographs across the seat between them. These are the people you need to recognize on sight, Katya said, tapping each photo. Vincent Caruso, real estate developer. Also launders money for 3 different criminal organizations. This is his wife, Elena, former model, current trophy, smarter than she looks. Zara studied the faces. Caruso was handsome in that polished, expensive way. Silver hair, strong jaw, the kind of smile that belonged on campaign posters. Elena was 20 years younger, blonde, with the kind of beauty that required maintenance. This is Richard Moss, federal judge, on Caruso's payroll. This is Senator Patricia Wexler. Same. This is... How many? Zara interrupted. How many people at this party are part of... whatever this is? Katya's smile was thin. At least half, maybe more. This is how power works in this city, not in back alleys, in ballrooms. The car glided through downtown, heading toward the historical district where old money lived in buildings that predated the Civil War. What's Dominic's plan? Zara asked. We can't just walk in there and pretend everything's normal. That's exactly what we do. Caruso thinks Dominic is dead or running. Seeing him at this event, calm and confident, will create doubt. Doubt creates mistakes. Katya leaned forward. Your job is to be the detail that doesn't fit. You're new. Unknown. Expensive. Standing close to Dominic like you belong there. It'll make Caruso wonder what he missed. Who you are. What you know. And then we watch him panic. The car pulled up to the Ashford estate, a 3-story mansion lit like a stage set, valets in white jackets moving with choreographed efficiency. Through the windows, Zara could see chandeliers, couples in evening wear, the golden glow of wealth on display. Her hands were shaking. Katya noticed, covered Zara's hand with her own. Listen to me. You've already done the hardest thing. You chose to step into this world. Everything after that is just details. Details like not dying? Exactly. Katya's smile was sharp. Now get out of this car like you own the fucking building. The ballroom was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across marble floors. A string quartet played something classical in the corner. Servers moved like ghosts, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvres on silver trays that caught the light. And everywhere, people. Beautiful people. Powerful people. People who moved through the space with the ease of those who'd never questioned their right to be there. Zara felt every eye turn toward her as she entered on Dominic's arm. Breathe, he murmured. You belong here. I really don't. Neither do half these people. They're just better at lying about it. His hand pressed against the small of her back, warm and steadying. Chin up. You're bored by all of this. You've been to better parties in Paris. Zara lifted her chin, channeling every confident woman she'd ever served, every customer who'd treated her like furniture. The posture shifted something inside her, made her shoulders drop, made her stride lengthen. Better, Dominic said quietly. Now smile like you know a secret. She did, and suddenly people were looking at her differently, not as an outsider, as someone they should know. A woman in diamonds approached, her smile practiced. Dominic, darling. We heard you were in Singapore. Change of plans, he said smoothly. May I introduce Zara Merchant? Zara, this is Diane Rothschild. Zara extended her hand, keeping her grip firm but not aggressive. Lovely to meet you. Diane's eyes swept over her, assessing, calculating. Merchant, are you related to the Boston merchants? Distantly, Zara said, the lie sliding out easier than expected. Shipping side of the family. Ah, Diane's smile sharpened. And how do you know Dominic? We met through mutual. Interests? Zara let the ambiguity hang. Art, primarily. How fascinating. Diane's tone suggested it was anything but. She turned back to Dominic. You must come by the house. Marcus was asking about you just last week. The name dropped like a stone. Dominic's expression didn't change. Was he? How is Marcus these days? Recovering, I hear. Some sort of accident. Diane's eyes glittered with something that might have been malice or might have been curiosity. Such a shame. Indeed. Dominic's hand tightened imperceptibly against Zara's back. "If you'll excuse us, I promised Zara an introduction to the Chagall in the East Gallery." They moved away smoothly, Dominic navigating the crowd with practiced ease. "That woman knows," Zara whispered. "Of course she knows. Everyone here knows something. The question is what they'll do with that knowledge." He guided her toward a quieter corner. "And here comes the real test." Zara followed his gaze. Vincent Caruso stood near the bar, holding court with a small circle of admirers. He was laughing at something, head thrown back, the picture of a man without a care in the world, a man who'd ordered a murder 3 days ago. "Stay close," Dominic murmured. "Don't speak unless spoken to, and whatever you do, don't let him see you sweat." They crossed the room. With each step, Zara's pulse hammered harder. This was the man, the one who'd bought Marcus's loyalty, the one who wanted Dominic dead, the one who would kill her without hesitation if he knew who she was. Caruso saw them approaching. His smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, so brief Zara almost missed it, before sliding back into place. "Dominic Cade." Caruso's voice was warm, rich, carrying just a hint of surprise. "I heard you were out of town." "I was. I'm back." Dominic's tone was light, casual, giving nothing away. "Vincent, I'd like you to meet Zara Merchant." Caruso's eyes shifted to her, and Zara felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. He was studying her, cataloging, searching for the piece that didn't fit. "Miss Merchant." He took her hand, his grip firm, his smile perfect. "Have we met before?" This was the moment, the test. Zara smiled, channeling every ounce of bored confidence she could summon. "I don't believe so. I've been abroad for several years." "Paris," Dominic added. "Zara's an art consultant." "How interesting." Caruso held her gaze a beat too long. "What brings you back to the States?" "New acquisitions, new opportunities." Zara tilted her head slightly. "The market is shifting. I prefer to be where the movement is." It was vague enough to mean nothing, specific enough to sound informed. Caruso's smile didn't waver, but something flickered in his eyes. Calculation, suspicion. "Well," he released her hand, "any friend of Dominic's is welcome in our circles." He turned back to Dominic. "We should have lunch soon, catch up properly." "I'd like that," Dominic said. "My assistant will reach out." They moved away, Dominic guiding her with practiced ease, his expression neutral until they were safely in the next room. "You did well," he said quietly. "He knows something's wrong." "Good. I want him off balance." Dominic accepted 2 glasses of champagne from a passing server, handed her one. "Drink slowly. Look relaxed. We're here for another hour at least." Zara took a sip, the bubbles sharp on her tongue. "What happens now?" "Now we circulate. You meet important people. You laugh at mediocre jokes. You make them remember your face." His eyes met hers. "And tomorrow, when Caruso starts asking questions about who you are, he'll find exactly the answers I want him to find." "What answers?" Dominic's smile was cold. "That you're real, that you're connected, that you're someone he should have known about." He paused. "And that killing me just became exponentially more complicated." The rest of the evening blurred together. Zara shook hands with people whose names she'd forget by morning, smiled at jokes that weren't funny, deflected questions with practiced vagueness, and slowly, impossibly, she felt herself sliding into the role. Zara Merchant, art consultant, woman who belonged in rooms like this. It wasn't comfortable, but it was effective. By the time they left, her feet were screaming in the expensive heels, and her face hurt from smiling. But she'd survived. She'd walked into a room full of people who wanted her dead and convinced them she belonged there. In the limousine heading back to the warehouse, Katya handed her a tablet. "What's this?" "Surveillance footage from tonight. Watch Caruso after you left." Zara played the video. Caruso stood with 2 men she didn't recognize, his expression no longer friendly. He was angry, gesturing sharply. One of the men pulled out a phone. "He's calling someone," Katya said. "Trying to figure out who you are. By morning, he'll have your cover story. By tomorrow afternoon, he'll start to believe it's real. And then? And then he makes a mistake." Dominic's voice was quiet. "He'll try to leverage you, maybe threaten you, maybe try to recruit you. But whatever he does, he'll reveal something about his organization. Zara looked at the man on the screen, powerful and dangerous, and currently convinced she was someone she wasn't. "This is insane," she whispered. "This is strategy," Dominic corrected, "and you just became the most important piece on the board." Zara thought about the woman who'd served water at table 9, who'd worried about tips and rent and whether she'd ever be more than invisible. That woman was gone, replaced by someone who could walk into a room full of killers and make them doubt what they knew. Someone dangerous, someone surviving, someone who'd just learned that power wasn't about strength. It was about making your enemies uncertain. "What's next?" she asked. Dominic's smile was sharp. "Now we train you to fight. Because when Caruso figures out who you really are, and he will, you'll need to be ready for the war that comes after." Zara looked at her reflection in the limousine's window. Designer dress, diamond necklace, the face of someone who belonged in a world she'd only observed from the outside. She touched the necklace, the punch came feeling from nowhere. The cool weight of it. Zara's head snapped back. Katya had said. Stars exploding across her vision. You knew how to use it, flooding her mouth, including herself. She stumbled, caught herself against the training mat, tasted blood. "Again," Katya said, no sympathy in her voice. It had been 3 weeks since the gala, 3 weeks of training that made the first day look like a warm-up, 3 weeks of learning that survival wasn't a single skill. It was 1,000 small deaths of the person you used to be. Zara spat blood, reset her stance. Her ribs were taped from yesterday's session. Her knuckles were split and healing for the 3rd time. She'd lost 8 pounds she couldn't afford to lose, gained muscle in places she didn't know could build muscle, and stopped flinching when Katya moved too fast. "You're telegraphing," Katya said, circling her like a shark. "Your shoulder drops before you strike. In a real fight, that hesitation gets you killed. In a real fight, I'd have a weapon. And if you don't?" Katya struck again, faster this time. But Zara was ready. She blocked, redirected, and drove her elbow toward Katya's ribs. Not full force, this was training, but with enough commitment that Katya had to respect it. "Better." Katya stepped back, a rare smile crossing her face. "You're starting to think like a fighter instead of a victim." Zara wiped blood from her lip. "I don't feel like a fighter." "Good. The ones who feel like fighters get cocky. Cocky gets you dead." Katya tossed her a towel. "Take 5. Dominic wants to see you." Dominic's office had evolved over the past 3 weeks. What had been a sparse command center was now a war room. 3 walls covered in surveillance photos, financial documents, interconnected diagrams showing the web of corruption that tied Vincent Caruso to 47 different power players. The ledger Marcus had sold wasn't just information. It was a map to an entire shadow economy, and Dominic was planning to burn it all down. "Sit," he said, without looking up from the document spread across his desk. Zara sat, acutely aware of how she must look, sweaty, bruised, her training clothes clinging to her. But Dominic had seen her in worse states, had watched her fail and fall and get back up for 3 weeks straight. "Caruso made his move," he said, sliding a folder across the desk. Zara opened it. Inside were photographs of herself. At the gala, entering the warehouse 3 days ago, having coffee at a cafe she'd visited exactly once. "He's been following me for 2 weeks, trying to confirm your identity, map your patterns, find a vulnerability." Dominic finally looked up, his expression unreadable. "He found your cover story exactly where I planted it. Princeton records, art consultation contracts, even a few carefully placed social media accounts that go back 5 years. He believes it? He's starting to, but he's also cautious, which is why he's going to make contact soon." Dominic leaned back in his chair. "The question is whether you're ready for what that means." Zara thought about the woman who'd signed a contract 3 weeks ago, terrified and determined in equal measure. That woman felt like someone she used to know, someone younger, someone who didn't know how to break a man's wrist or read a room for exits or lie with her entire body. "What does it mean?" she asked. "It means you stop being a chess piece and become a player." Dominic stood, walked to the window overlooking the warehouse floor. "Caruso is going to approach you, probably somewhere public, somewhere you feel safe. He'll be charming, sympathetic. He'll suggest he knows Dominic isn't who he claims to be, that you might be in danger. And then? Then he'll offer you a way out, money, protection. All you have to do is tell him what you know about my operations. Dominic turned to face her. It's a recruitment pitch disguised as rescue. Zara's stomach tightened. You want me to take it? I want you to consider it. Make him work for your trust. Feed him information, true information, that leads him exactly where I want him to go. His eyes were steady on hers. This is the part where you stop training for the war and start fighting it. What information? Dominic pulled out a USB drive, set it on the desk between them. Financial records, legitimate records of transactions that will make Caruso think I'm moving assets in preparation to run. It'll make him confident. Confident people make mistakes. And when he realizes it's a trap, by then it'll be too late. Dominic's voice was ice, for him and everyone on that list. Zara picked up the USB drive, feeling the weight of it. Such a small thing, such enormous consequences. How do you do this? She asked quietly. Manipulate people like pieces on a board, use their trust as a weapon. By remembering that they did it first, Dominic's expression hardened. Marcus wasn't just my employee. He was my friend. I trusted him with my life, and he sold me out for money. He paused. Everyone on that list has betrayed someone, destroyed someone, hidden behind legitimacy while doing illegitimate things. I'm just holding up a mirror. And what does that make you? Ruthless. He didn't hesitate, but honest about it. Zara thought about the past 3 weeks, the bruises and blood and endless training, the way she'd stopped sleeping well, stopped recognizing herself in mirrors, stopped thinking like someone who believed the world was fair. What does it make me? She asked. Dominic studied her for a long moment. Surviving. Everything else is semantics. The approach came 2 days later, exactly as Dominic predicted. Zara was at a bookstore in Lincoln Park, one of the few places Dominic allowed her to go alone, under heavy surveillance. She was browsing art history texts, genuinely interested despite the performance, when a man in an expensive suit materialized at her elbow. "Excuse me," he said, his voice cultured, apologetic. "I believe you dropped this." He held out a business card, not hers, but printed with her cover identity's information. Zara took it slowly, examining the card. "I don't think so, but thank you." "My mistake." He smiled, charming but not pushy. "You're Zara Merchant, though, aren't you? I saw you at the Ashford benefit last month." "I was there, yes." Zara kept her voice neutral, curious but not eager. "Richard Moss." He extended his hand. "Federal judge. I know, terribly boring at parties." Zara shook his hand, recognizing the name from Katya's briefings. One of Caruso's people, not a player, a messenger. "Not boring," she said politely. "Just careful what you discuss at social events, I'd imagine." "Exactly." His smile widened. "I was actually hoping to run into you. A mutual friend suggested we should talk." "Which friend?" "Vincent Caruso. He mentioned you might have questions about some of the people in our circles." Moss lowered his voice slightly. "Specifically about Dominic Cade." There it was, the hook. Zara let uncertainty flicker across her face. Not too much, just enough. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Of course. Forgive me for being presumptuous." Moss pulled out his own card, legitimate this time. "If you ever want to discuss art acquisitions or anything else, in a more private setting, please don't hesitate to call. Mr. Caruso is always interested in meeting knowledgeable people." He left before she could respond, disappearing into the stacks like he'd never been there. Zara waited 5 minutes, purchased 2 books she didn't need, and walked out to where Dominic's car was waiting 3 blocks away. "It started," she said, sliding into the back seat. Katya, at the wheel, met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "You handled it well." Interested but cautious. "What happens now?" "Now we wait." Dominic's voice came through the car's speakers. He was somewhere else, watching remotely. He'll reach out again in 3 to 5 days. More casual, building trust. Let him work for it. And then you meet Caruso face to face, and we see if 3 weeks of training was enough. 4 days later, Zara sat in a private dining room at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants across the table from Vincent Caruso. He'd called personally, his voice warm, inviting her to discuss a potential art acquisition for his corporate offices. The pretext was thin, but she'd accepted, playing the role of someone flattered by the attention. Now, watching him pour wine with practiced ease, she understood why people trusted him. He radiated competence, charm, the kind of charisma that made you want to believe whatever he said. "Thank you for meeting me on such short notice," Caruso said, handing her a glass. "I know you must be incredibly busy." "Not too busy for an interesting opportunity." Zara sipped the wine. "Expensive, of course. Everything about this man was expensive." "Good. Because I believe we could have a very productive relationship." Caruso leaned back, studying her. "You've caught the attention of several people in our community. Impressive, considering how brief your time here has been." "I'm good at making impressions." "You are." His smile didn't waver. "Which is why I wanted to speak with you personally, about Dominic Cade." Zara let surprise register, subtle, contained. "What about him? How well do you know him?" "Professionally. We've worked on a few acquisition projects." She set down her glass. "Why do you ask?" Caruso was quiet for a moment, his expression shifting to something more serious. "Because I'm concerned about you, Ms. Merchant. Dominic is a complicated man with complicated associations. People close to him have a tendency to find themselves in difficult situations." "Are you suggesting I'm in danger?" "I'm suggesting that Dominic operates in spaces where the rules aren't always clear, and someone with your expertise, your connections, could easily become collateral damage if you're not careful." The words were perfectly calibrated, concerned but not accusatory, offering protection without explicitly threatening. Zara understood the game now. Caruso wanted her to feel unsafe around Dominic, wanted to position himself as the safer alternative. And once she trusted him, once she started sharing information, he'd use her to get to Dominic. Standard manipulation, effective because it appealed to self-preservation. But Zara had spent 3 weeks learning to see manipulation before it landed. "I appreciate your concern," she said carefully, "but I'm not sure I understand what you're implying." "I'm implying that if you ever feel uncomfortable, if you ever need to discuss what you've observed in Dominic's operations, I'm someone who can help." Caruso reached into his jacket, pulled out a phone. "This is a secure line. Only I have access to it. If you need to reach me day or night, you call this number." He slid it across the table. Zara looked at it. Such a small thing. Such a massive trap. She picked it up slowly, turning it over in her hands. "Why would I need to call you?" "Because I think you've seen things working with Dominic. Things that don't quite add up. Financial irregularities, strange meetings, people who come and go without explanation." Caruso's voice lowered. "And I think part of you is starting to wonder if you've gotten involved with something more dangerous than you realized." He was good. Better than she'd expected. Every word designed to create doubt, to exploit the natural paranoia that came with living in Dominic's world. If she'd actually been Zara Merchant, art consultant, she might have believed him. But she wasn't Zara Merchant. Not really. She was Zara Hayes, former waitress, current weapon, and she knew exactly what game they were playing. "I'll think about it," she said, pocketing the phone. "Thank you for lunch." "Of course." Caruso stood when she did, ever the gentleman. "I hope we can speak again soon, under better circumstances." Zara smiled, the expression careful, measured. "I hope so, too." She left the restaurant, walked 3 blocks to where Katya waited, and got into the car without looking back. "How did I do?" she asked. Katya was grinning. "You just convinced a man who orders executions over dinner that you're considering betraying Dominic. I'd say you did perfectly." He gave me a phone. "We know. Dominic's been listening the entire time." Katya pulled into traffic. Now we feed him the information and watch him take the bait. That night, Zara stood on the warehouse roof, the USB drive in her pocket, the city glowing beneath a sky that threatened rain. Dominic found her there, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He didn't speak, just offered her one and stood beside her, both of them looking out at the lights. "I lied to him," Zara said quietly. sat across from him and lied with my entire face. Yes, and tomorrow I'm going to call him, feed him information designed to destroy his life. Yes, and I don't feel bad about it. She turned to look at Dominic. What does that make me? He met her gaze, his expression serious. Someone who survived long enough to become dangerous. Someone who understands that in this world, the only real choice is whether you're the hunter or the prey. I used to be prey. I know. His voice softened slightly. But you're not anymore. And you can never go back. Not to who you were. Not to what you believed about how the world works. Zara thought about the woman in the restaurant uniform, worried about tips and rent. That woman felt like a ghost now, a memory belonging to someone else. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Becoming this? Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Every day. And never. He looked at her. Because the alternative is being Marcus. Choosing wrong for the right price. And I'd rather be ruthless than for sale. Is that what I am now? Ruthless? You're surviving. He set down his coffee cup. Everything else is just how you tell yourself the story. Zara pulled out the USB drive, held it up to the light. Such a small thing. Such enormous power. Tomorrow she'd call Caruso, feed him these files, watch him believe he was winning. And 3 weeks after that, when the FBI raided 47 different locations simultaneously, when judges and senators and businessmen found themselves answering questions they'd paid millions to avoid, Vincent Caruso would realize he'd been played by a former waitress who'd learned to fight in a warehouse basement, who'd transformed from invisible to inevitable, who'd discovered that power wasn't about strength. It was about knowing which masks to wear and when to take them off. I'm ready, she said. I know. Dominic turned to leave, paused. For what it's worth, Zara, you would have been wasted pouring water. You were always meant for this. He left her alone on the roof, the city sprawling beneath her, a kingdom of light and shadow that she was learning to navigate without fear. Zara touched the diamond. Necklace she still wore sometimes, the one from the gala, the weapon that had started all of this. She'd walked into a restaurant 3 weeks ago as one person. She was walking out as someone else entirely. Someone dangerous, someone capable, someone who'd learned that the difference between victim and victor was just a choice made in a single moment of courage or insanity. She'd made her choice, and she was never looking back. She walked out as a weapon aimed at an empire. But here's what I need to know. Did this story wake something up inside you? That part of you that knows you're capable of more than the life you're currently living? Like this video, if Zara's transformation hit different, subscribe, because I'm creating stories that show you what's possible when ordinary people refuse to stay ordinary. Comment your truth. What version of yourself are you ready to leave behind? What transformation are you too afraid to start? Thank you for watching. Till next time, stay safe.